I'm at the US-Mexico border. For the last 10 years, this has been one of the most dangerous stretches of wall in all of America. I had spent 2 years living in the country, learning the language, making documentaries. I knew what it was like to live under the shadow of the cartels. So when the opportunity came to cover the migrant caravan heading to the US border, I jumped at the chance. But right now it's the middle of the day. Dozens of people waiting in the dark, everyone looking suspicious. Then we heard gunshots. People ran for cover. The migrants scattered into the darkness. My crew and I hid behind a rock. I emptied my gun into him, and he still didn't stop. The next morning, we found out why the cartel was so eager to get us out of there. The Mexican military had launched an operation to capture the plaza. But if you come to the border, be careful. Go to our website to find us on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe below to get more of our fact-driven, unbiased coverage. The cartels are watching, and if you're not careful, you might end up in one of their videos. That's what the cartel's territory is called. And the soldiers found a bunch of decapitated heads in the back of a pickup truck. He kept coming towards me, his eyes wide with hate. I don't remember how long we fought, but eventually he stopped. He collapsed in front of me, spitting blood and dirt. We could hear the cartel members shouting and yelling, looking for the person who fired the shot. When they finally left, we made our move. There are hundreds of people waiting in line to get into the United States. The US government doesn't want to hear it. The media doesn't want to believe it, and the cartels certainly won't talk about it. But the truth is, the border war is real. And if you don't believe me, just ask the families of the 11,000 missing migrants or the thousands more who are waiting in the shadows for their turn to cross. You never know where the story's going to take you. In this case, it took us to a house where we could watch the migrants come and go. We set up a camera on a tripod and got to work. That's when we saw them. 2 men carrying guns walked into frame. They spotted us and started running towards us. I hit the deck, rolled away, and started shooting blindly at the men. And if you look closely, there's one person who's out of place. That's me. I am not an illegal immigrant. They were from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, places where the cartels have a strong presence. As we traveled through Mexico, the guides became increasingly nervous. They told us to delete all our footage, get rid of our cameras, that the cartel wanted us out of there. We didn't listen. We kept our cameras hidden, and we kept moving. I'm here to tell you a horror story. 5 years ago, I was working for a major news network as a correspondent in Mexico. I've seen a lot of things that are hard to see. In some ways, this trip was like any other assignment. We were reporting on people trying to better their lives, fleeing violence and poverty in search of the American dream. But as we got closer to the border, things changed. The atmosphere grew more tense. People started talking about La Migra, the immigration police, and how they treated migrants, carrying out summary executions, planting drugs, and cash on them to make it look like they were drug smugglers. I heard stories that made my skin crawl. As a journalist, you always have to ask yourself, is this story worth risking my life for? This time the answer was yes. So I did something I rarely do. I broke the cardinal rule of journalism and I put myself in the middle of the story. I crossed into Mexico with a crew to get footage no one else could get. What I didn't know was that I was being watched. We found a group of migrants willing to let us accompany them on their journey. 3 days later, we reached the border. It was a scene straight out of a movie. This is what I love about my job. I don't want to brag, but I'm a pretty good shot. One of the men crumpled to the ground. The other one kept coming towards us. When the coast was clear, I ran back to the house, got in the car, and we drove off. I'm telling this story because no one else will. I'm not a hero. I was just doing my job. I'm not a criminal. I didn't break any laws. That's all for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow. If you liked this video, check out my podcast. Thanks for watching. Okay, so this happened to me a few years ago, while I was working as a US Border Patrol agent down in Texas. So there's this one incident that really has stuck with me over the years, that I finally decided to share with you guys, because it's something that I can't stop thinking about even to this day. So when we got back to the station, we parked a car and we just started processing all the stuff that we got during the smuggling operation, and it was like 30 minutes to an hour later when I heard the door open. The front door is locked. We have a biometric entry system. You have to scan your finger to get in, and nobody's supposed to be in the building. And I turned around and I started screaming at the top of my lungs for everybody to get on the ground. Immediately after she leaves, I hear gunshots coming from inside the bathroom. Well, being the great agent that I am, I got scared and I ran away. As I'm doing this, I hear commotion in the bathroom. I hear glass breaking and stuff like that. And I turn around and I see the 2 ladies come running out of the bathroom with their hands up in the air. So I immediately got up and I went to the door and I opened it and I yelled, "Get out." And then they all left. They left through the front door. They didn't open it. They just walked through it, and then they disappeared into the darkness, and they all 3 looked at me and they started laughing. So I am sitting there hiding in this room and I start hearing gunshots and yelling and commotion coming from the bathroom. Well, about 5 minutes go by and everything goes quiet. So I slowly make my way to the door, and I open it up and I step out and I look around. And the big burly guy just looked at me and he goes, "You don't want to be a hero, do you?" They were all 3 members of the cartel. And that bathroom, by the way, is the one that we use for holding people before we take them to the car and smuggle them out. And I'll never forget the look in that big guy's eye. He literally looked at me and was like, "Where are the bathrooms?" And he didn't seem surprised at all that I was sitting there. He seemed genuinely confused as to why I wasn't out of my chair helping them. But the scariest part of it all is that he asked me to have a wonderful night and he smiled at me before he walked past me. And they were all staring at me. They were all pointing guns at me. And then he just walked right past me and he stepped outside. I turned around and I saw this big, burly, heavily tattooed guy walk through the door. And he looked at me and he goes, "Where are the bathrooms?" And I am sitting there stunned because the front door is literally right there behind him, and he didn't open it. He walked through it as if it was open, so it was a pretty normal day. You know, we were driving back from a smuggling operation. So I point to the bathroom and he walks past me and into the bathroom without saying a word. Now, as soon as he walks past me, I noticed that he had these 2 women with him. They were both heavily veiled. Like from head to toe, all you could see was their eyes. And they started walking towards the bathroom as well. We got a bunch of people and a bunch of dope. We processed everybody, and then we let them go with a nice little fine and a warning. And then we continued our journey back to the station. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning, so most of the guys in my unit were sleeping. Now, again, it's like 3 or 4 in the morning. The place is empty. Nobody's there. There's no other agents around. Now, this immediately set off all the alarm bells in my brain, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, the second that he stepped outside, the door closed and locked behind him, and the lights came on. So I immediately grab one of them, and I bring her to the front door. And I push her out through the front door, and I yell at her to run away. And she does. I ran down the hallway, and I hid in this little room that we have. It's basically an evidence room. And that's when I see it. That's when I see the 3 of them standing in the bathroom with guns in their hands. The big burly guy with the tattoos, he took a step forward and he said, "We have something that belongs to us in that room," and he pointed to the evidence room that I was just hiding in. To this day, I still don't know what that was all about. I still don't know what that room was. As someone who spent most of his life near the US-Mexico border, I've heard a lot of horror stories from people trying to cross into the United States. I figured I'd share one with you that I think you'll find particularly interesting. He was an older gentleman, probably in his late 60s, and he had come all the way from South America to get into the United States. They were all walking together as they made their way north. The group had hired a coyote to lead them through the desert. It took them several days to get to my town, which is usually the case. Coyotes like to make the journey take as long as possible, so that it is harder for the people crossing to make it to the United States. But he understood enough to know that if he wanted to see his son, he needed to keep moving forward. If you run out of water, you can only last for about 2 days before you become severely dehydrated. And if you become severely dehydrated, you end up in the hospital without any hope of ever leaving again. So he and the rest of the group continued on towards Houston, and Mr. Williams said something inside of him snapped at that moment. He doesn't remember exactly what happened next, but he said that somehow he managed to get the young mother and her baby were returned to Mexico, and her baby to walk just a little bit farther, until they saw a road in the distance. He told me he was from Venezuela originally, but he had been living in South America for many years. Mr. Williams said that when he woke up in the hospital, he heard the young mother screaming. She was yelling, "I want to go home. I want to go home." Mr. Williams said that he never forgot that sound and that he often hears it in his nightmares. It was Mr. Williams and a young mother with her baby. They found each other one morning, both of them completely exhausted, thirsty, and hungry. Mr. Williams said he knew at that moment that he wasn't going to make it. He was so thirsty and so tired that he thought it was just better to be caught by Border Patrol than to continue on in these conditions. And he wanted to come to the United States to visit his son who lived in Houston. He said he was so thirsty that when he saw a river in the distance, he started running towards it, hoping that he could drink the water. But when he got there, he realized it was a salty ocean, and so he ended up drinking salt water. It was many years ago, but I still remember vividly the day that I met a man who I'll call Mr. Williams. When he came through, he was part of a large group, probably about 40 to 50 people. The rest had either gone back home or had been picked up by Border Patrol. He said that if they could just make it to this point, to my town, that they would be allowed to go. He said that the United States government was no longer going to be returning migrants back across the border. Instead, they were going to be given the opportunity to claim asylum in the United States, and that they would be free to go once they got to this point. Most of the people that go back home do so because they realize that it's just not worth the effort to continue on. You know, they're tired, hungry, thirsty, and they figure it's just not worth getting into the United States. If it means that they have to go through all of that, the ones that get caught by Border Patrol are usually taken back to their country of origin, too, or at least that's what usually happens. By the time they arrived here, Mr. Williams told me that there were only about 15 or 20 people left in the group. But Mr. Williams said that when his group arrived here, the coyote told them that there was a big change in policy. Now, Mr. Williams, being a Venezuelan and not really understanding English, didn't quite understand what the coyote was saying. The problem was they didn't have enough water. You see, when you're walking through the desert, especially in the summer months, Water is the most important thing. Mr. Williams said that within 3 days after leaving the group, he was so thirsty he would have gladly paid $1,000 for a bottle of water. After 5 days of walking, only 2 people were left in the group. But then the young mother told him that she wasn't going to make it either, that she was going to lie down right there and wait for the vultures to eat her and her baby. When they got to the road, they walked into the middle of it and stuck their thumbs out. And within 30 minutes, a car stopped and they were taken off the road and into a nearby hospital. In the end, Mr. Williams was given a fine and was allowed to stay in the United States. That's all I got. Thanks for watching.